Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to 16 Parts of the Mind, Intellect and Intelligence, Sadhguru on Mind, Sadhguru Adiyogi. So, I always thought intellect and intelligence as being the same, but Sadhguru differentiate them in a way. I'm not exactly sure. I think intelligence is book smart and intellect is something different. I think that's inherent. I think, or is it the reverse? Not sure. But me being the mind kind of person, so 16 parts of the mind. Let's hear what he has to say. Super cool.
Here in Silicon Valley, I think some of the things that we see with our children and some of the things that we hopefully want to help them work on and improve on their own, issues like fear of failure, even though they're incredibly bright, capable young children, fear of letting their parents down, defining success in very narrow ways, peer pressure, conforming to the group, always being on. How can we impart some perspectives both on the parents and the children to manage these issues and create more balance in their lives? One of the things you were remarking on is I think you noticed that particularly in Palo Alto, which is an incredibly sophisticated city, the suicide rate is very, very high.
Of all the terrible things that can happen to us, our children want to commit suicide. This is unacceptable. It's the worst thing that can happen in any society.
I don't disagree with that, absolutely. And the weird thing, I think maybe in the Indian, I'm sorry to interrupt, but due to some recent events, it seems to be turning outwards as a way to solve their inner problems. I think what they're talking about here, they were turning inwards to try, not inwards in the same sense as what Sadhguru is talking about. They're turning to themselves to solve the problems, and that being the solution. And in the case and going on in America, it seems to be they reversed it. If you get my drift, and take an outwards approach to that problem, because they see a problem, and some see it as themselves, some see it as the world. And they don't know how to fix that problem. A mental health issue.
But this is not just an American phenomenon, it's happening everywhere. In India, 9,600 children committed suicide last year below 18 years of age. Out of this, about 800 children are below 12 years of age. Our children want to commit suicide. There can't be anything worse happening in society, isn't it? Obviously, we're doing something fundamentally wrong, because a child is a fresh life. A child is a manifestation of exuberance of life. But today you're seeing children are becoming like this. Because the fundamental reason for this is one thing you will see in our schools. Children are exuberant and joyful. This is most important for me. This is important for every human being, not just for children. We have become like this because we are exercising only one dimension of our intelligence, which is called the intellect. Intellect means
I got it reversed.
Your intellect is useful only if it is sharp. You agree with me? Hello? You are becoming so serious. I'm talking about exuberance. Your intellect is useful to you only if it's sharp. The nature of the intellect is such, anything you give it give your intellect, whatever you give to your intellect, the only way it can know something is by dissecting it. If you give this flower to a scientist, first thing he will do is he will pull it apart to see what is inside. If I want to know you, Jonathan, should I pull you apart? Is there a way to know life, I'm asking? Because this is what the intellect can do. We're just banking on human intellect too much, we're too enamored by our own intellect. Intellect means it has to function logically. Once you're intellectually on, you cannot accept anything which is not logical, yes?
And that's me. That is definitely me. So, and someone made a comment in one of my videos earlier about that, and I was thinking about replying to it, but it's more along the lines. Okay, if it doesn't fall under logic, then does it fall under illogic, not logical?
Logic means there has to be two. Two were created by your intellect. What is one big life? We make it into two. Everything we go on dividing, and we fragment the universe into millions of pieces in our mind. And we store all these pieces and hope they will all fall together. They will never fall together, because whatever falls, falls in the sharpness of your intellect and further slices. You're talking about being really smart. If you're really smart, you must know how to keep yourself well, isn't it? Hello? I'm really smart, but I'm screwed up. What is the point, I'm saying?
Strange thing is there's actually a lot of very smart people who have some type of issue, and I don't necessarily mean like Richard Hawkins? Not Richard Dawkins, sorry. Oh gosh, I can't remember the guy in the wheelchair that has to use a machine to talk. How come I can't remember his name? Anyways, he's very, very smart, but then he has that very rare disease. It seems like a lot of people, and Beethoven, I believe, was deaf, which was kind of weird. There's a lot of smart people with some type of defect, but yet they're so gifted in it. It's like a curse in some sense. I'm not saying everyone, but it's just really interesting. Like he's saying, I'm really smart, but I'm screwed up.
What is the point of this? If I am really smart, I must know how to keep myself in my best possible way. This has not happened because our education systems, in their fundamental concept, do not allow other dimensions of intelligence to function. We recognize in the yogic sciences, when we say human mind, in yoga we say there are 16 parts to your mind. These 16 parts can be categorized as fundamentally 4 parts. First is the intellect, which is called as the buddhi in the local languages. The next is called ahankara, the identity. Your intellect always functions around your identity. Whatever you identified with, your intellect functions around that. It may be your individuality, it may be your family, it may be your community, it may be your race, religion, nationality, but it functions around that. You will live for it and you'll die for it. Whatever you identify with, that is what it will try to protect, because intellect is essentially a survival tool. Without intellect, you cannot survive.
I'm wondering if it's also because that is… well, he said your identity, which is who you are in some degree. And that's the reason why I will protect it, because if it destroys that, it destroys who you are, and you don't want to destroy who you are, because this is what your life has built up to be, what your life has built up to identify as an identity. This is me, this is I. Not I, but I.
Right now, we are using intellect as a way of acquiring knowledge. We are using intellect to enhance our life. It will not work like that. Intellect is a fantastic survival tool. If your intellect is sharp, you'll survive well. But survival will never satisfy a human being. And for these children who are in this kind of school, survival is not even an issue. So they don't know what the hell they're doing with themselves. Raising the bar of survival, that's all that's happening. We are going on raising the bar of survival. Though you're doing very well, your stomach is full, you're eating and sleeping well, you feel like you're being oppressed.
Oh my gosh. Again, so much truth into that. And this is something I think of too. It's just, I mean, even before, let me try to think. Maybe not too far before watching these videos, I've thought about this just because, again, I've seen both sides. Let me put it that way and be very vague. I'm sorry. One side being America, and again, I say this about there's certain people in America they feel that they're entitled to things. I think that's a problem. Identity too, but also entitlement, because they, like, if they don't get what they want or deserve, they feel that they're entitled to it, and if they don't get it, they kind of lashed out. They're like, "Huh, I should get that. That's mine. I'm entitled to it," and they don't appreciate. So with entitlement, it comes with the lack of appreciation because they believe they're entitled to it. So when they get it, they were entitled to it. If they don't get it, well, they're entitled to it. Or to a person who do not feel like they're entitled to something and they get something, they appreciate it. They cherish things that they're not entitled to. But because of how do I say, luxurious American life is, and I don't mean like it's like you're living up or anything like that, it's just because you have a lot of freedoms, you have a lot of ability to do almost what you want, but because they were in a sense born in this type of society, that becomes an entitlement and not an appreciation of receiving that. The cost of what built in America in some sense is lives. A lot of people died to, well, bring America to what it is today, whether it's be fighting for their freedoms or protecting the world in some degree. Obviously, we're talking about World War II here. It took a effort from a lot of sides to stop a freaking dictator there. But also, even within America itself, people died for their freedoms. Talking about the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. But because this how do I say, these things that have been fought for was now given to the people, and the people who fought for it appreciate it because they know what kind of sacrifices was done to get it. And a few generations, 1, 2, maybe 3 generations down the line, can appreciate that, even though it was wrong for what the government was done to them, but they can appreciate the freedom. And now we look into the future where, because they were born with it, they never knew anything other than, they don't know what it is without it. And how do I explain this in such a way? Here's an example, sorry. A simpler way to explain that. When you go about your normal city life and you go just going out and eating whatever you want, you have your choice of food. You can go eat hamburger, spaghetti, or salad, or whatever it is, any day, anytime, and just whenever you feel like it. Then when you go to another country who don't have those options, and it's not open 24/7, and it's a struggle. And then when you go there and you do that exact same thing, I can only hope that you learn to appreciate what you have at home. My problem is, I think certain Americans will still go back to this, like, huh, I'm entitled to this, and will not learn the lesson of appreciation. Now, again, not all. I'm sure there are some like that, and that's my problem. Sorry, I talk too much.
Because you have raised the bar of survival to an unrealistic place. Survival is taken care of, isn't it? Hello?
Should be good enough.
So you should never feel threatened about that. It's only about doing something more. But that will not come through intellect, because intellect will only think of survival, because it is a survival tool. Now we are trying to put the world together with our intellect. This is like…
Sorry, quick pause. That moment there, I've always understood your intelligence or your tools as a way of survival. And I don't know why, at that moment, I saw a little bit more clearly what it meant about that. Again, even though I knew that, I don't know why I saw that a little bit more. I understood what it mean by everything about this body is only about survival. Your intelligence, your fat storage. Really, it is about survival. It's storing that fat for later use, just in case you need it, just in case food is scarce. Your muscles so that you can lift, you can do work, your legs so that you can run. All this is built for survival and nothing else. And a lot of people, I think today, sees this as more than just survival. And they're trying to use this for more than survival when it's not really meant for that. Hopefully you're understanding what I'm saying here, but this is meant for survival, but we have to learn a way to use it for not survival. We're constantly using it in non-survival situations, and we're getting frustrated in a way, I think. I just thought about that, and I'm trying to understand Sadhguru here as what he meant by that, because I've heard him say that before. I agreed with him, but I didn't quite fully understand it until just about now. There's still more to learn though.
Intellect is like a knife. You are using a knife to stitch. You know, you will tear more and more. You will see the more intellectual people get, they look smarter in a society, but if you just look at them as a life, they're just stupid. They don't know simplest things of their life. They're smart compared to somebody else because they're able to do something that somebody cannot do. But how they are within themselves, they can't sit in one place peacefully. This means you obviously don't know how to handle your intelligence. The only problem with most human beings is, people do not know how to handle their own intelligence. Well, they have exotic names for this. They call it stress, they call it anxiety, they call it depression and many varieties of depression and madness and whatever. But fundamentally, you don't know how to handle your own intelligence. If you do not know how to handle the most vital aspect of who you are, which is your intelligence, which sets you apart from every other creature on this planet, it's a disastrous life. How can this be a smart life, I'm asking? If you are smart, you know how to handle your vital assets. One of the greatest assets that we have as human beings is, we have a cerebral capability that no other creature has. But we have not taken charge of it. It works against us. This is because you have a car with 4 wheels, but you want to drive it on 1 wheel. It's very stressful. It's bound to be stressful. The other dimensions are not used. The second is called the ankara, which is the identity. This is very important. How an identity is set up.
Real quick, I wanna go to this car an analogy, and I want to add Swami Sarvapriyananda's because I like it a little bit better, and I hope that this will to those people out there who may prefer this analogy a little bit better. I like the horse a little bit better, because you want to ride a horse, but if you don't know how to operate a horse, you're just going where the horse is going. And he gives a story about, you know, he sees there's this village and they see this guy riding on a horse. It's like, and the villagers were asking, "Hey, where are you going?" And the guy riding the horse is like, "I don't know, ask the horse," because he doesn't know how to operate the horse. The consciousness is the person riding the horse, and the horse is your body and mind. If you don't know how to control your body and mind, it's going to do whatever it needs to do, and you have no control over it. Sadhguru talks about that quite a bit, about how, you know, reading the instruction manuals to your body and your mind, and a lot of people don't really know how to use it, and I agree with them. I am the same way for sure. I have learned some things. Ever since my my college, I learned some small things.
I see in these cultures, very strong identities about religion, about race, about nationality, and maybe a football club or a basketball club. They are so strongly identified. This will not allow things to happen. One thing traditionally in India we set up is, which is unfortunately vanishing today because we have taken to English education. Traditionally, when a child has to start education, first alphabet he has to learn means, first he is told, your identification is with the entire cosmos. Aham Brahmasmi, he's taught. He's made to utter a mantra which means, I'm everything. Because education is seen as an empowerment. You should not empower a human being who has limited identifications. If you empower somebody with limited identity, he will cause damage to everybody else who are not in the ambit of that identity. This is what as nations we are doing. This is what as race and religion we are doing to each other, isn't it? Every day this is happening. When somebody else does it, it looks ugly. When we do it, we are justified because everybody has their own logic. Let me take an extreme example because I have a way of walking into trouble. Right now, one thing that bothers everybody is what is happening in the Middle East, this ISIS, whatever, okay? Most horrendous things are happening. But people who are perpetrating this believe they are doing the best thing. They're doing God's work. And they believe it 100%. They are not crooked people, believe me. They believe it 100%. Because a man who is willing to die for it, at least you must trust this, isn't it? Someone is willing to die for something means he must be genuine in what he carries within himself, isn't it? Yes or no? Life is precious for every human being. He is willing to die for it means he absolutely believes it. The only problem is limited identity. You have an identity of yours, others are not in that, so they must go. So like this, from a very early age, we are setting up identities which are narrow, based on various things. This is a very important requirement if intelligence has to simply expand without limits. It is very, very important children start with a limitless identity, that you're identified with everything in the universe. This is very important. Now this identity, if you want to use an analogy, your intellect is like a knife. The identity is the hand that holds it. The hand that holds decides whether a knife will make life or take life, isn't it?
And this is where I'm going to bring up my way of looking at identities. It's a middle grounds type of identity, and it's something that works for me. And it goes with actually what he's saying here. I look at identities as tools. We can use it as a way of separating ourselves and destroying each other, or we can use it as a way of embracing each other and seeing some very cool, interesting things about people who don't have the same identities as us. So for example, I've never seen a cricket game. Mind you, I think I've seen every other sport. I've seen volleyball, football, American football, soccer, baseball, volleyball, softball, table tennis or ping pong. Just name a sport, I've seen it. I've never really watched cricket. But if someone says, oh, I play cricket or I like cricket, I'd be like, that's freaking cool. I would honestly, genuinely would love to learn about all the sports, at least basic things to understand it when I'm watching it. And that's an identity I've never had, something that I know of, but I've never had and never associated with because I've never experienced it. But I look at that as like, that's cool. Let me know more. Let me talk to you about what's the point of cricket. What's the pitcher or the batter? I don't know if those are positions or not. I know there is someone that throws the ball and someone that bats the ball. Other than that, and there's I think 3 prongs or something like that, and then maybe outfielders. I'm using baseball terms here, but yeah, I'll talk to him and just wait to learn. I may not like cricket, But I would love to learn about it. And if you like cricket, that's perfectly fine. And I would be like, that's awesome. And if there's a cricket game, I'll say, hey, look, there's a cricket game going over there, just in case you want to go watch it. Use it as a way to embrace each other's differences, and not as a way of separating, a tool to divide, a tool to destroy. They're using their identities as tools of destruction. You must have our identity and our identity alone, or no. Whereas I look as identities, oh, that's what you like? That's cool. You're not harming me, I'm not harming you, and you're not harming anyone. That's fantastic. More power to you. So this is my middle grounds type of identity, where you don't necessarily only have to have one identity as the identity of human beings, but just as a way of embracing differences that are, of course, not harmful. And also not using your own identities to separate yourself from another person. Like, if you don't like soccer, then someone else says, oh, I love soccer. Like, I don't want to be friends with that person. I hate soccer. Don't like soccer. Again, that identity is a way of separating. Instead, it's like, well, I don't really like soccer. I find it kind of boring. But you like soccer, that's really cool. Just to let you know, there's a soccer game going on in the college over there if you want to watch it. You know, again, not to be so hateful or spiteful of something that you don't like. It's just you don't like it, that's fine. But don't hate someone else because they like or dislike something.
Knife does not decide. In the hands of a surgeon, it may save a life. In an irresponsible hand, it takes a life. Knife is not doing this. It is the hand that holds what kind of identity have you taken on. Accordingly, your intellect becomes a fruitful thing for everybody around you, or it becomes a destructive process.
Yeah, well, I guess
Intellect is a useless instrument unless it's fed with some data. If there is no data, if you wipe out all your memory, suddenly you look like a dumb person, though you have a sharp intellect. Because intellect cannot function without data. So the third dimension of the mind is called as manas, which is a huge silo of memory. We identify 8 different forms of memory. The first form of memory is called as elemental memory, atomic memory, evolutionary memory, karmic memory. In that there are 2 varieties. One is a silo of memory, another is an active memory, which is called as sanchita and prarabdha. And sensory memory, inarticulate memory and articulate memory. What you're experiencing as conscious memory is the articulate memory. It is not even 1% of the memory that you carry. When I say not even 1% of the memory that you carry, you definitely do not remember how 10 generations ago your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather looked like, but his nose is sitting on your face. Because your body remembers every bit of it. Yes or no? There is a genetic memory here which remembers. Similarly, there's an evolutionary memory, atomic memory, everything. Everything from the beginning of creation to now, in some way is there. That is why this body is able to take this form and retain this form. Essentially, every form and every particular specific activity what we're calling as genetics, what is passing on from one generation to another generation is just a certain module of memory, isn't it? Memory is a possibility and it is also a boundary. Memory means accumulated information. Today, in the technology world, memory does not mean here, it's in the computer in so many places. Memory means accumulated information. Accumulated information means a limited possibility. So the 4th dimension of intelligence is referred to as chitta. This is a dimension of intelligence unsullied by memory. There is not an iota of memory in this. This is the intelligence which is the basis of your making. That is, today, if you eat an apple, there is an intelligence here which turns an apple into a human being. If you eat a fish into this, it will turn into a human being, because there is an intelligence here which can do this miraculous job. If a drop of this intelligence, if you touch your chitta, suddenly your experience of life will become an ever-expanding process. Suddenly, your genius will flower in such a way. Every human being might have touched this dimension of intelligence at some point or other unconsciously. But the important thing is you're consciously able to bring forth. This must come into our children. If we are interested that the next generation should be way better than who we are, it's important that they touch a dimension of intelligence that we did not access. Otherwise, in many ways, we have not done what we are supposed to do. Because one of the fundamental purposes why we are here is the next generation should be able to do what we could not do. They must be able to do what we did not even dare to imagine. Not in terms of doing freaky things, but in terms of doing something well beyond our capacity to do things, isn't it? That can only happen if we touch this dimension of intelligence, otherwise intellect is a trap. Intellect is good for survival because it only goes from the accumulated memory, beyond that it cannot expand. Here and there, every human being might have touched this dimension of intelligence, but are we creating a system through which we can constantly access this? That's a big question. Only then human genius will flower. Only then you will see education becomes an empowerment, not an enslavement to some kind of desire.
Oh, okay. Okay, now I was just thinking towards the end there about what he was talking about. I guess my thing is that I want to try to find a way to kind of merge what I'm learning with what I've learned and my experiences. That's basically all what I'm doing. I'm not saying what I'm doing is right. It's all, you have to experience everything. And then from your experience you must come out with what I believe to be the best results for it. And how do I make an example out of that? I'm not sure. It's kind of like, I guess an example is kind of like making food. You know, you put in a few ingredients together and then you taste it. If it tastes bad, then you know that's not the way to make food. And if you mix a few ingredients, you're like, oh, this tastes pretty good. Then all of a sudden you find a new ingredient, it's like, that tastes good. Put that in the pot. Okay, that tastes a lot better. That is an ingredient, right? That is a recipe right there. Let me say it. A recipe, not an ingredient, because that's multiple ingredients, but that's a big old recipe. Like that. That's how I live my life. I learn as much as I can. Some people say, "Oh, you're trying to be too logical. Your intellect's holding you back," and maybe so. And you know what? I can only go as far as I am comfortable with, and what I can make sense of things. And if that's my limitation, then so be it. Again, I'm not gonna stress out about it. And I think, again, living life isn't about stressing out about things. And of course, do what you can to live your life to the fullest. Don't let people hold you back from trying to be happy. But of course, be it peaceful and not harming anyone. So if by learning Jnana Yoga, if that's your way of learning, I think that's kind of mine for the most part, because I think too much. Then by all means, or devotion, Bhakti Yoga. Again, Raja is the one that that fourth one always, I just don't quite understand it, because all the other three, karma, jnana, and bhakti yoga, all make sense. Religious people follow bhakti very well, and I get it, and I understand it so much more. I understand religion people a little bit more about their devotion to God and just saying, I leave it in God's hands. I've kind of made fun of that. Let's say when I was a bit younger, just because of course I'm still atheistic now, and I was a bit back then, but I get it now. As Swami Sarvarpiyananda has explained Bhakti Yoga, where they just say, you know what, and the weirdest thing is, yeah, Swami Sarvarpiyananda says that they just leave it in God's hands, and the way he explained it just makes a lot of sense. But also, it was really weird, and I didn't like this fact, but I think they say religious people tend to be happier because you don't stress out over little things. And I was like, oh no, why is that? This can't be. But I understood it when I read that, and whenever I read that or saw it, and when I reference what I remembered about them saying, I just leave it in God's hands. So they don't worry about it. If something doesn't go their way, it's like, well, I'll leave it in God's hands. Basically, that's what Swami Sarvarpiyananda has said about Bhakti Yoga. So just leave it in God's hands. Just continue to live life. Do your work, work your life. Do your life to the best of your abilities, and leave the rest in God's hands. So I understand that, and I understood it back then too, but not quite as much until I heard Swami there. Karma yoga is more physical activities with your bodies and with your thoughts. I get that, but personally, I don't know how to separate myself with that. Emotions I have, intellect and thoughts I have, but yes. So anyways, 16 parts of the mind: intellect, intelligence. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.